Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. We have a lot to discuss in this episode. The season so far, of course, we'll be previewing the Tottenham Hotspur v Bournemouth game that, of course, takes place this Saturday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Carabao Cup draw, the Champions League draw, and there is now only 4 days left of the summer transfer window. What business will Daniel Levy and the board get done for Tottenham in the next 4 days? Now, my name is Chris Cowlin, and we're live on YouTube, X and Facebook, so please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling as a Tottenham Hotspur fan right now. Now, as per usual, I've got 3 channel regulars with me. Si Foxhall is back with us. Si, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Still recovering after the marathon session on Sunday, but other than that, all good. All good. Been touring the country today, so I'm full of beans and ready to discuss some Spurs stuff as ever.
Absolutely. Lots to discuss, as I said. Back with us also is Gary Ward. Gary, how are you?
Yeah, doing great, mate. Yeah, just got back from my mum's watching the Champions League draw. She done nothing but moan at me for 2 hours because it was ridiculously long. But apart from that, got caught in a massive rainstorm. But yeah, ready to talk all Tottenham.
I've got to admit that Champions League draw did go on a little bit. It really did.
Oh, did it much. Whew.
And back with us, I'm glad to say, is Becky Day. Becky, it's been a while. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me on. Plenty to talk about as usual. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Becky, I'm going to start the show with you, and I want to start by talking about the Champions League draw. It's a day we've all been looking forward to. Let's get your reaction to the Champions League draw. Of course, we will be playing 8 games, 4 at home and 4 away. The home games, Borussia Dortmund, Villarreal, Slavia Prague and FC Copenhagen. And the away games, PSG, Eintracht Frankfurt, Bodo Glimt and AS Monaco. Let's get your thoughts on the draw today.
Yeah, I think I posted on X over the summer about how Spurs supposedly last year won the Europa League with all the so-called weak teams, and then we've got teams that we've been drawn against this time we're in the Champions League. So I think when you kind of first look at it, I didn't watch the draw. I have to say, I sat down and people were saying how long it was taking, and so I sort of left it until it finished. But when you kind of go in and look at it, they are teams that we played last year. You've got Bodo Glimt away. Obviously, we've got PSG, so a very quick turnaround of the Super Cup. Nice to see kind of Eric Dyer for Monaco. So there's some quite, there's some nice. They could have been worse. I think when you look at the teams that we could have been drawn, Galatasaray are in it again this year. We haven't got them. I think it's nice to have Copenhagen for Thomas Frank, if nobody else. A lot of my friends are saying they would have preferred them to be the other way around and the home games to be the away fixtures, but I think, I just messaged my husband, he's Liverpool supporter, and he's saying, they're all winnable games. The only thing that I would factor in is obviously it builds up the intensity when you've played them so recently. So players have got, it kind of makes it even more of a fixture, doesn't it? Because they've got, wrongs to right and things like that. But I think if we'd all taken it at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we would have, apart from maybe PSG, happily sort of said, yeah, they're all perfectly winnable. And I think the format of the way it is now, you don't have to win every game. I think when it was a 4-team group stage, it was a different factor. I think because of the way the format is it now, you could actually, have some poor games and still manage to get through. Certainly when you've got the playoff element of it as well. So I think it definitely could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, Tottenham's first Champions League group stage game will take place between the 16th and 18th of September. And then the last one will be on the 28th of January. But confirmation of all the times and the dates will be released on Saturday. Really looking forward to hearing the Champions League music again. As you said there, Becky, it could have been a lot worse, couldn't it? But some of the teams that we've visited before, it seems weird, doesn't it? Never played Bodo Glimt ever before in European competition, and then twice in 2 years.
Yeah, and when you've got an allocation of 400, it'd be quite likely that those similar 400 would be there again. Also, some of my friends are saying it depends when it gets put. If it's kind of the height of winter, it was cold enough when you went last time. So,
yes.
Yeah, it's those sort of things. Like I said, avoiding things like Galatasaray away again, and those sort of, really far. There was a Kazakh team, wasn't there, in it this year, and those sort of fixtures. Monaco, those sort of games that. PSG, they're not far, are they? They could be a lot worse in terms of travelling, and Thomas Frank setting up for matches on the weekend and things. So, yeah, I think it could be worse.
So let's get your reaction to the Champions League draw. I've got to say, I'm pretty happy with it. I know what Becky said there about, the home games could be away and the away being home. I think I'd have preferred that as well, because we've got 2 trips to France, one to Norway and one to Germany. Most of these places I've been to before, but really looking forward, as I said, to hearing that Champions League music again. It could have been so much worse, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was convinced we would get Bayern in from pot one. I just thought after the previous game we'd get them. The only thing, I looked at it and thought, wow, we're going to get 22 points and we'll be in the top 8 of the group, no problem whatsoever. When I saw the teams I'm being seriously, if you look at it last season, you had to get more than 11 points to guarantee to go into the playoff matches and then into the round of 16. And when you look at those fixtures, even with the squad as it is now, you've got to think that we stand a chance of making that 11, 12 point plus level that would take us forward in the competition. But going back again, if you look at some of the runs of it, what we've got on in November and Champions League games in November between or around Arsenal and whoever else is in that run, it's going to be tough. But then that comes back to our favourite subject. Depends how good your squad depth is. So, for me, I think it could have been a lot worse. And, we stand a fair chance in all of those games, and even the PSG one. You just got to do a carbon copy performance of what we did in Udine. So, yeah, all in all, I'm happy with it.
I know, Si, you're probably going to say it depends what happens in the next 4 days, but when you look at these fixtures, particularly the home games, would you expect us to go through to the next round?
Personally, I think I think we will. I've kind of said before the draw was even made, I thought we could make the round of 16. So I'm definitely not going to change that. And yeah, again, it just boils down to the same old thing. You've got to have the strength in depth, because you're not going to, if all things being equal, we're going to play 50 plus games this season, and you can't have particularly players with injury records like Van der Ven and Romero, expect them to play those 50 games. It's just not going to happen. So therefore, you've got to have the squad depth. And if you're, working towards Mr. Levy's promised land of competing on all 4 fronts, you've got to have the squad depth to do it. So the ball's firmly in his court, isn't it, really?
It'd be very interesting. Becky mentioned about Eric Dyer. Of course, plays for Monaco, but Thomas Partey plays for Villarreal, and he will be coming back to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I don't know what sort of reception. Well, I do know what sort of reception he will get. Well, yeah.
It's going to be. We've got Juan Foyth coming back as well, which will be, nice to welcome back a former Spur. But if you go through the teams team by team, and we know what to expect with Frankfurt, we know what to expect with Bodo Glimt, and our record against German, French, Czech, Danish, Norwegian, and Spanish teams is pretty good. Against all of them, we've got a win or draw percentage that's in excess of 60% historically. I'm like, for my stats, Chris, couldn't leave it alone, could I? But we've got a 60% success rate against all of those teams of winning or drawing. So, we stand a good chance of moving forward. So, yeah, but what reception Partey's going to get. But also, I think it'd be nice to see Juan Foyth back. I'm one of these guys that's always happy to see former Spurs players come back and, welcome them, give them a cheer, and then hopefully we give their team a good drubbing. But I'd never hate on ex-Spurs players, not any of them.
Do you know, when it was announced that the final was in Budapest, I did have a cheeky look at the final, and I got a very cheap flight for 60 quid. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to risk it. So my flight to the final is already booked. Have I wasted my money?
No, not for me. I no. Who knows? It's the luck of the draw on it. And like I said, it comes down to where we end the transfer window. And maybe if we do well in the league stage, it would be what we did in January. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? But for a 60 quid punt, Chris, I've punted 60 quid on far less than you have. So.
You never know. It could be it could be a very good 60 quid well spent, yeah. Gary, let's get your thoughts on the draw.
Yeah, I'm happy. A bit like you. I would like to have seen us maybe play someone different from last year, but equally we're going in there and there's some familiarity, which I think is very good for the players. Obviously not for Thomas Frank, but again, the staff, there's some staff still there, and obviously most of the players. So I think that familiarity is obviously very good. I'm happy with the draw. I think it favours us well. If you look at the 6 English clubs, I think that touch wood, or every bit of wood that we can touch, we probably have on paper, the better of the draws. I think, Liverpool and Chelsea's does look quite difficult. But look, anything can happen. We could have an injury crisis, again, we could just be out of form. Who knows really, but on paper it looks good. I'm happy. I'm excited to see Eric Dyer come back as well. I don't think we gave him a good enough send off for sort of the 9 years he was there, and I hope that he does get it. I think he certainly deserves it. I do quite like Dortmund as a German side. I love watching them play at their stadium, so it'd be quite nice to watch that on TV and see the Tottenham boys hopefully come away with 3 points.
Yeah, it would have been a very difficult game, an even more difficult game, Gary, wouldn't it, if it was at Dortmund in front of that yellow wall? The atmosphere is incredible. Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen that. However, we've got our own wall, right? We've got a white wall, so they have to come and deal with ours. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Dortmund. I think PSG, PSG is going to be PSG. That they've started this season with 2 1-0 wins in Liga. So. Decent. They're not really sort of come out second gear. Monaco, first 2 games, 1 win, one loss. Again, you don't know what you get too much from them. And Frankfurt, Bodo Glimt, we played last season, so hopefully it's more of the same there. But I'm happy with the draw. I think that we definitely need some more people in until before Monday. To get us through a very, very busy period that's going to come up over sort of Christmas, New Year, or that sort of time period. So let's see where we are in a week's time.
Do you think that there's a certain lad at Monaco we might like in our squad?
I'm not getting excited about any transfers. I spent far too much time getting excited about some numpty that's gone to Arsenal. I absolutely love the bloke. He's gone to Arsenal. I'm not getting excited about anyone, but I'm really excited about Javi Simmons, just to put that out there as well. Monaco have got some fantastic players, obviously. It's going to be difficult. These teams aren't in the Champions League out of, luck. They're all good teams, and there's some tasty games up and down the league. I wasn't a huge advocate for the new format originally, because I was playing it on Football Manager before it came in reality, and I thought, I don't like this. But in real life, it was absolutely phenomenal. So I'm really pleased that Tottenham are back in it, and let's see how far we can go.
Gary, does it soften it a little bit, the fact that we played PSG in the Super Cup final and how we played in that game? Because I feel like if we hadn't have played that game, people would be now like, oh my God, this is a terrible draw, PSG, Champions League winners. Does it make it like that tie feel a little bit easier, if that's probably the wrong word?
Yes and no, I think. At the end of the day, they came back and had 6 days training after a very, very long season. They played themselves back into the game. You could tell sort of 60, 70, 80th minute where the players were starting to, like, muscle memory was starting to kick in for them. Equally, if we can continue in the path that we're going down, and I'm not saying we're going to win every single game, but I think performances and especially positive results, we can lose but still can be positive in terms of our performances. I think that will be quite good to take into against PSG. But equally, if PSG are going to go from strength to strength, so it'd be interesting to see how they perform over that time period as well. So it's a bit of a yes and a no. I think that certainly they will improve. I hope that we do, and we continue sort of the good start we've had in these first sort of 2 Premier League games. But I think maybe it's slightly too soon to tell. We're both unbeaten in our leagues, so take that as we will.
Let's get all of your opinions now. Of course, last night it was the Carabao Cup draw for the 3rd round. Spurs have been drawn at home against Doncaster Rovers. Becky, another good draw for Spurs. League 1 Doncaster. They won League 2 last year. I suppose this is the perfect draw for Spurs, isn't it? Not being too arrogant, but you want to be facing a lower league opposition team to go through to the 4th round. And plus, Thomas Frank, he would probably feel that he could give opportunities to a number of fringe players and development players, but at the same time still go strong. But having that home advantage, really does help.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing for us was being at home. I think the way the Carabao Cup now is seeded and the European teams, it was kind of pre-drawn, wasn't it? I know in the past it's not always been home, so it's good that it's home. Those of you that know, I'm from Shrewsbury originally, and Grimsby beat Shrewsbury in the 1st round. So it was quite funny that, kind of Grimsby then went and beat United. So, yeah, I think having Doncaster, it is a great draw, but we have to err on side of caution. I know they're not all in the same tournaments, but remember when we lost to Norwich and Colchester and those sort of teams. So it isn't always a given that we play a lower league team and we just kind of roll them over. But, yeah, I think it is an opportunity to kind of rotate and play some of the younger players, the kind of more inexperienced players. I think with the Carabao Cup, it's if you play your home games, you're expected to win, certainly as a Premier League team. But yeah, I think watching last night, I watched the Grimsby game. I turned it on at kind of 1-0 up, and it was great. And the penalties, for the kind of neutral. I know we weren't neutral in this house, but for neutrals, watching a penalty shootout where it went past the goalies and back round again was quite fun as well. Because apart from in kids football, have we ever really seen that? So. And obviously their big signings, missing the penalties, and then Sesko not taking one to the 10th penalty and all that kind of stuff. As we kind of alluded to, it's been a weird off season for Spurs. With the kind of in terms of the transfers and teams, players that we've been linked with, and then supposedly choosing other teams. And when they don't perform that well, it is quite fun to see. But yeah, I think going back to your original question, I think Spurs would be expected to win. I don't anticipate it being a televised fixture. That usually tells you that they don't expect there to be a shock.
That's all right. We don't need it televised. Just go through to the next round. Si, what are your thoughts on the draw against Doncaster? Because, like I said, all of us Spurs fans, we want to see the team always strong. But I suppose Thomas Frank can give opportunities as well, but still go strong in the game. How important is a Carabao Cup to you? Because I know that some fans now, they say, "Oh, not interested in the Carabao Cup." But when you saw that parade, when you saw the parade even for Newcastle fans to win the League Cup last season, incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you should go into every competition, in my opinion, trying to win it. Whether you do or you don't is another matter, dependent on the draw, and how favourably that runs for you as well. But for me, if you, I don't like this, backup players and whatever else you want to call it. But if you think about it, we could put out a team in the Carabao Cup against Doncaster that's going to have Kinski in it, Danso in it, two of the fullbacks will have to play in it, Archie Gray, Berryvale. If you go against the team he played against City on Sunday, you could have Odebear playing, you could have Solanke playing, you can have Perm, whoever you want out of that. It's not exactly a weak team, is it, to take on a League One side? So for me, I just think you take every game seriously, and we should be looking to win it. And also, for me with that one, because it starts earlier in the season than the FA Cup, and if you do well in it, kind of as we did last year, it does help you in the early part of the season, I think, and it allows players to be up for a game, if you're coming in on a rotation that matters, and therefore that's the mindset you want them playing in every game. So for me, I think there's only positives from it. If you do actually have a squad that you can rotate around. But like I said, the players I just named, that's a strong enough team to take care of, quite a lot of teams, including some Premier League teams. So I don't see why we would or shouldn't be taking it seriously.
Gary, this would be an excellent opportunity, wouldn't it, for Thomas Frank to put a trophy, his first trophy, and Tottenham's first domestic trophy in the cabinet since 2008, which, of course, the last one we won, the League Cup. Happy with the draw?
Yeah, very happy. I'm not sure if Danilo Jai can play. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Obviously, he's on loan from Tottenham. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but if he can play, that'd be good to see him play. I thought he done well. When he did come on in the Europa League last season, he's played. He scored already this season for Doncaster, obviously against Middlesbrough, but in and out of the team so far, which is good for him. But not too sure on there. But yeah, happy with the draw for me. Football is about one thing, and that's winning, and that's not anything else. I grew up very much of I'm not doing something unless I can win or I can at least do very, very well. I just don't believe that we should go in to any competition thinking this isn't quite important to us. We're not. Hopefully, we're not at the stage yet where we're like a Manchester City or a Manchester United, where they're traditionally winning loads and loads of trophies. We should be going in and saying, yeah, look, these are things that we want to win and we want to increase that trophy cabinet. We can reach Europe with these trophies. Obviously, the FA Cup, we can see the outpouring of that Europa League win. I can't see why anybody wouldn't want that every season. And I definitely think these should be taken priority. For me, one of the first games I ever saw Tottenham play was the FA Cup. The FA Cup is just it's unreal to look at and to lift. I was lucky enough to lift it when I went to Wembley. And I just would love to see it in person. And I just believe that we should dare to do, and we should dare to go and win these things and put everything in and go and win it. I hope we do, and this is a good draw for us. And no disrespect to Doncaster, but let's hope we don't get banana skin like Manchester United did last night.
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because we've got off to the flying start. Thomas Frank has got off to the flying start. 2 wins out of 2 in the Premier League. Not a goal conceded yet. He's got Richarlison, firing. Richarlison closing down. Kudus crossing balls in, and great defensive work as well. We've all touched on it there about the strength and depth. Becky, let me come to you on the transfer window. Now, the official latest from Sky Germany is an official offer from Tottenham to RB Leipzig for Xavi Simons. 100% confirmed with both clubs in direct contact today. Tottenham are pushing. Xavi Simons is in London. An agreement between RB Leipzig and Tottenham is seen as a matter of time. RB Leipzig are demanding 70 million euros, including add-ons. No decision for now. It is now up to the player and any potential Chelsea movement. We know that he has been in talks with Chelsea in the last couple of weeks, and that was his preference, apparently. A good signing for you, Becky, if we could get this one over the line, and we're not going to get carried away because we've been here before in this transfer window for Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze and Savinho, I might add. Xavi Simons would be a good signing, do you think?
I must admit, I don't know a great deal about him. I've heard of him. I know in terms of having Maddison injured and needing that kind of creative player and, a left winger, whether Simons would play kind of the number 10 role or more the kind of left wing role, obviously with Son going. I think, like you just said, normally when Spurs have kind of put an offer on and personal terms have been accepted, it is usually a formality. Usually the kind of the amount that's paid is sort of adjusted and the payment terms are adjusted. But the phrase this summer has been, it's now the player's decision. And it feels like, for whatever reason, the Morgan Gibbs-White one, whether it was their chairman or whether it was personal matters, obviously Eze one, again, had he agreed things before the Charity Shield or not? And so I think that's what's putting the fear into all Spurs fans is this now the player's decision. And for me, the thing for all the players that we've been linked to is that they are going to get game time in that position because Son's not here and Maddison's injured. So I think if for me it'd be, well, compared to Chelsea, who seem to have about 400 players, it's this idea that you're going to get game time at Spurs. And, we've already seen in the 3 matches that Thomas Frank has done, he rotates. He's even rotated the formation that we're not used to. Ange was so rigid in terms of how he played, no matter which team it was, that it's really refreshing to see the way that Frank is changing things and, seemingly doing it for the opposition, which sounds so radical, doesn't it? Because that just wasn't what we used to last year. But is that you would go to the player and say, you are going to get game time in the XYZ positions. And then to hear, players saying, no, they've opted for another team. My reaction is it must be money because, we have a fantastic stadium, a fantastic training ground. We're in London. I always say this every time I drive down. We have London, and I think that's what kept Richarlison and Romero there for so long, if they like living in London. So, these sort of pools that we've got, I know that's similar for Chelsea as well, but you just think you're going to get game time. And, I'm not getting carried away with it. I just think you just hope, don't you, that they see the logic in it. I know we've had relations with Leipzig before, which is making me a little bit more hopeful. I think I was on holiday when the Eze thing happened, and when you're sitting at sunbathing and you're kind of scrolling through everybody's comments, it just felt so disheartening that we couldn't get it over the line. Whatever it was, we couldn't offer, or we just, this idea that we aren't, maybe it is wages and what is it that's putting players off? We've just won something. It used to be that we don't win anything, allegedly. Now we have. What is it that's putting players off? And you just think we're running out of teams that we had good relations with. It felt like, there's such a small pool of chairmen that will deal with Levy that, we have dealt with Leipzig, which is a positive. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to get carried away. I think it would be a great fit. It does come, but wait and see. Like I said, there's 4 days left. Yeah.
Becky, in terms of the transfer window, 4 days to go, are you surprised that we haven't done more?
Hand on heart, no. I think when Kudus was sorted out so early in and Paulinho, and it just felt like that was Spurs getting it done early. And I know we've had a lot of deadline day ones before with Johnson and Van der Vaart, those sort of things. I just sort of felt like if they said that they've been looking at the data and all the people involved in looking at the way players play and the kind of type of players that we get, it just felt like that it had been done. Bearing in mind that Kudus and Paulinho are such physical players, and the kind of player that we've got in both of them seemed like that had been something that had been quite organised and planned, and it just felt like that was done. And they knew about the money from Morgan Gibbs White, and that kind of idea that the money's out there, and then the selling clubs are just going to increase because they know that we've got this money. I've just got this worry that we're going to overpay for somebody. And again, the later you leave it, the selling clubs haven't got time to replace. So, I think it's frustrating that we haven't got it done earlier, but I do think also they possibly had. But that, that's not to say that we aren't. I just think really we just don't know. It's just I would prefer it to be done because obviously then they could be part of, there's the tours away, and that they knew that Son was leaving, and they knew that there was things that needed to be put in place. It just seems, if there is all this kind of preparation, that it just seems a little bit misguided. Really, it's not quite worked.
So let's come to you now. Of course, Javi Simons certainly does play in that number 10 role, attacking midfielder. He can also play on the left wing and the right wing, but his preferred role is through the middle. He's right-footed, very comfortable with his left foot as well, fast. He cuts inside, excellent vision, creativity, quick feet, excellent dribbler. Really good passer as well. High defensive work rate, which will be excellent for Thomas Frank. Constantly tracking back when possession is lost, and very active pressing in midfield and in the final third. Let me get your opinion, Si, on Javi Simons, and let me stress as well that Chelsea remain heavily interested in this player, and let's see how this pans out. Si, how do you think that this is going to pan out? Is this going to be another disappointment, or do you think we can get this one over the line?
I'm kind of 50-50 on this one, Chris. I mean, looking into his stats in the Bundesliga and the Eredivisie, he got goals and assists, 2 in every 3 games. Champions League and European football, 1 in 3. So, he's the kind of player we're looking for, isn't he? it's a high risk strategy to take stuff like this to the end of the window would be my only point. And so for me, do I think we'll get him? I think it's 50-50. Chelsea have gazumped us before at the last minute, have they not? And then we've had the other knockbacks in this window. So I'm anything but certain this gets done. If it did get done, it's the perfect type of profile of player that Frank would want. And I think he would be pushing for, being the starter in the first team anyway, regardless whether Maddison, Kulusevski and whomever is in the club and is fit. So for me, it's definitely the standard of player we're looking for. It's certainly the quality of player we're looking for. It's certainly the work rate of a player that we're looking for. But will we get him? I thought we get other players in this window. But it is the one thing I would say is consistent with the strategy that we've had, insofar as we lost Sonny, we lost Maddison through injury and Kulu out. So we took creativity out of the team. Kudus brings a bit of it back in. But looking at the type of players that we've been going for, whether it's a Gibbs White or a Savinho or whatever, they are all, chance creators. So he fits that profile. So for me, it is consistent. But the big the big spectre of Chelsea hangs over this one, doesn't it? So I'm just hoping that the Jackson and Nkunku deals, which would be key to them having the financial capacity to do this deal in the eyes of UEFA, I hope they go right until Monday evening, because that will make it easier for us to get a deal for Simons or Simmons done. So, 50-50 for me, mate.
Gary, whether it is Javi Simmons or another player, because Give Me Sport have also reported that it's possible that Spurs could go in for El Khanous on the end, right at the end of the window, as a backup plan to not bring anyone else in. But when you look at our squad, Heung-min Son's gone out the door to LA. Basuma, they're trying to sell him, but Galatasaray, the deal has now fallen through. Mohamed Kudus and Polina have come in, of course, first team players. They walk straight into this team. Maddison and Kulusevski out injured. Kulusevski's expected to be back early 2026. Maddison's going to miss most of the season. Are we in a better, the same, or worse position than last season?
Well, worse. Much worse. We've lost probably one of the greatest ever players to play for the club. Granted, he was on a decline. However, if he stayed, he would still be one of the better players, not consistently every week, but a good player still. James Maddison, I don't think we've seen the best from him. I think Thomas Frank could probably definitely get that out of him. I think he was slightly handcuffed in sort of the rigidness that Becky sort of spoke about earlier with Ange. And I think Kulusevski is also in that same bracket, was moved out wide a lot, didn't traditionally play there for Juventus, more likes to play at a 10. And I thought that he played very well at times last year with the 10. And then we do need a replacement there. We need cover there. And we haven't replaced it. I still think we're light up front. I think that Richarlison has done well, but hopefully if we can keep him fit, there's a different argument. But we're definitely not in the position where we are now. I think Javi Simmons would be fantastic. I'm very much like Si. I don't want to get too excited because it's the hope that kills you, and it seems to be that every day at the minute I seem to be getting my hopes up, and then something happens. Like we're just talking now. And Romano is on DAZN saying that Chelsea are still back in for it, man. It's basically up to the player. It's either Tottenham or Chelsea. And it's a difficult one, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the situation's going to be. Are we going to be turned down by another player? I definitely think we're in a weaker position in certain areas. I'm happy with the Polina deal. I was really happy that we signed him. Kudus, I think, is exceptional. My father-in-law is a West Ham fan, and I said to him, like, what? Why did this happen?
You very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Karen Brady came out yesterday telling us it was all a PSR reason they sold him, and then went and spent £44 million today. So it clearly wasn't it, but he's absolutely outstanding. For me, I think we're still light on the left. We need to replace Song. I would like a naturally left-footed player there that's going to play similar to Kudus on the right, and we do need a number 10, and it's difficult to know where that number 10 is going to come from. If Javi Simmons is in London, that's being reported, he's only going to come to us or Chelsea. So it's going to be it's going to be an interesting few days, refreshing Twitter every 30 seconds, I guess.
Gary, sorry, go on, Becky.
The thing that I was thinking while listening to all of that, as I just said, people are going on channels and people are putting things out on different posts, is that it's the embarrassment that we feel. We try not to. The reason why Spurs fans are now like, nope, I'm not getting excited, I'm just not, it's because it's the embarrassment that we get poked at us that for whatever reason they chose which other club. And before, when that wasn't really mentioned, it was like, well, no one seems to know, okay, maybe we're alluding to it was wages or whatever. And now that they're saying that they were choosing other clubs, there's not really much, where do we hide? It's embarrassing, but I think the board can't hide behind that, because whatever they're offering is not working, and they can't keep doing the same thing and hoping that it's going to get a different result just with a different player. Because I'm reading the comments now, people are like, why haven't we gone for such a body? Yeah. We may have done, and they may have turned us down too. It's an idea that this, the board say we tried, but the key is, why are they turning us down? What is it that's stopping us? It used to be the trophy thing, and that's not it now. And I think, listening to everything you just said, for me, the best signing, well, two best signings this summer, Thomas Frank himself and Romero. I think, and if Bentancur also, if he ends up, the rumours are that he's signed as well, is this idea that they are really key. You could already see in the games that we've played the difference that Thomas Frank is making. And, you mentioned before about, to keep players fit. Richarlison is a different player because he's playing a different role. He was covering for Son quite a lot on the left last year. Now he's there. He hasn't scored a headed goal yet, but I really thought him and Solanke's goals this year were all going to be headers. They were going to be from crosses and they're going to be heading. And we haven't seen that to come yet. And I think Solanke, when he gets full fit, that's what's really exciting, is that the positivity that we have got so far has come from Thomas Frank and how he's working with the players that he has got. I do agree. I think we are worse than last year. Kulusevski and, still being injured, Madison, Son, etc. But I do think the way that he will get out of those players, they're hopefully not going to get as injured as much, because the way they're playing is different. And those, Sarr, the difference in Sarr already this season is fantastic. If he does end up being our number 10, then, again, we've got to make sure we don't overplay him. But it seems that Frank has got this idea of, like I said before, playing to the opposition and, rotating. And that's really, really promising. If there is anything positive out of the summer, they're the little positives that we have had.
Yeah, we as fans are obviously are embarrassed. And last week I was at my cousin's wedding and Garth Crooks was there, and he was on my table with me, and we talked, and he said he's embarrassed. This was the day after Eze, and he said it's an embarrassment. And he said in lots of ex-professionals and people that play for the club are embarrassed where things are going and how things are. And he told me some reasons why he thinks we're being turned down. And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to really work out why that is. Ultimately, it comes down to the money, and we're just not prepared to pay the money for these top players. The man at the top is surrounded by finance people. That was his exact words. The man at the top is surrounded by finance people. Not football decisions are being made, and we're being made to feel embarrassed about our football club. We after we won the Europa League, like, just in case anyone weren't aware, we won the Europa League last year. You went like you walked around and you were, I was really happy. I was like, I'm well pleased. I can walk around with this and it has some sense of pride. And then it's like, oh, this is a bit. We're being turned down by so many people, and it's not just us that are feeling it. There's other people as well that's been associated with the club and won things, and it's something needs to change. And unfortunately, I just don't see it happening by that particular individual is at the very top. But I agree with what Becky said. For me, the best signing, and I put this on my Twitter, for me was Christian Romero. That is a signing. That is like as good as a signing. Him committing his future to this football club, and players looking in saying, hang on a minute, a World Cup winner is saying this is the place to be. Players around him are going, hang on, he's won everything and he wants to be here. That for me is a huge, huge statement. And I hope that someone like Xavi Simons can go, actually, do you know what? I'm probably going to get more time there. And there's some big people there. And this is a huge club. And I hope that there are others that think that as well.
Chris, you posed a question about, why don't some deals happen? I think there's a couple of other factors that play into it. Number one is that certain clubs and certain chairmen don't want to do business with Daniel Levy. He has burned bridges across a number of clubs. It's widely reported that Steve Parish complained at the Chelsea game about dealing with Levy. The history between Manchester City and Spurs and Pep Guardiola, etc. And I think his reputation and the way he approaches deals does Tottenham no favours at all. And also you've got the factor that the PIF clubs are in this little group where they'll sell a 10-year-old to the other one for 30 million and the other one does it the other way around. We don't get invited to that because dear Mr. Levy doesn't have that relationship with other chairmen. And then on the overlap, he comes out and all but in name calls out other teams about stuff. So I just don't think he's universally liked. And one thing I'd hoped is that with Vinay coming on board, that he would step away from the football stuff and maybe Vinay had different and stronger relationships with other football teams. But that hasn't happened. And, when you hear that it comes down to the players' wages or, the structure of a deal, we all know where that road leads to. So I just think there's some other factors involved with this that are as a direct result of the way that Daniel Levy has behaved. And so I heard someone sum it up beautifully last night. Daniel Levy is an analog player in a digital world. What worked 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, won't work now, just as it is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say what Gary's point was about the wages. There have been various reports stating today that wages could be an issue at Spurs, where that Chelsea will give a lot bigger wages. Becky, I'll come back to you on a couple of those points that you made in a second. Gary, just wanted to ask, how important is it for you that Spurs do sign a number 10? Because Becky's point there about Sarr in that number 10 role, whoever you're playing in that number 10 role, when the club want to be fighting on all fronts, Thomas Frank, we've seen already early on, he's getting the best out of players, but it's not sustainable to be playing a player every single minute in every single competition, although some fans would like us to.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to get a replacement. Not a replacement. I keep saying replacement. I don't mean that. I mean cover. I'm not opposed to someone that has the ability to play in multiple positions, that can either play on the left and in the 10, or as a 6 and in the 10, or an 8. But we need cover, and I think the experience in there is needed. Now, Xavi Simons is 22, but look at the places he's been. He's been at Barcelona, he came through the youth academy, he went to PSG, RB Leipzig, and depending on your views of Red Bull and their involvement, they've nurtured a lot of very, very good players. And he plays well with the national side, and he has the ability to play in multiple positions. For me, I would very be open for an 8 that can play as a 10. Someone like a Sarr, I think, is perfect, but we also need cover in there. And my worry and concern is Basuma, what's happening with him as that additional cover. Bentancur, I'd absolutely love that he signs a new contract. Absolutely love the guy. I think he's fantastic. That also gives us that additional breathing room. So for me, it's cover, but it's somebody that we can work with that has experience. And I'm not talking about age experience. I'm talking about footballing experience. Yep. I think Xavi Simons covers that. If it was up to me, and I got ridiculous amount of pelters yesterday, I would go for Kobbie Mainoo. he would be the guy. I think he can play in multiple positions in the midfield. He's English, he's young, he knows the league very well. He can cover a 6 and 8, and he's played at 10. He can cover those positions. And with the amount of games that we've got, we need that. However, if we're going for just a 10, that concerns me that maybe we don't know how bad Maddison is, because I don't think he'll play this season. If it's as bad as it seemed, that's him done for the season, and that's definitely a replacement. So there's a lot of stuff that we may not even know about, and we're just sort of guesstimating in a way. But it's yes, I do think we need one, but I would be happy if we had somebody that can play in multiple areas as well, whether that be out wide on the left and as a 10.
Becky, what I wanted to come back to you on, talking about Thomas Frank. We all knew, what great job he's done at Brentford. 4 years in the Premier League with Brentford. They never, ever sat in the relegation zone, which is a stat I find staggering, compared to what they spent and other teams spent in the league. We know that he gets the best out of players. Do you think that there is a huge emphasis on him getting the best out of what he's got with just a couple of additions? Because I think a lot of the fan base, most of the fan base, expected Spurs to go big and sign a handful of real quality players, not just the 2 that we brought in. And don't get me wrong, any of the viewers or listeners, watching or listening right now, Mohamed Kudus is an absolute baller, superb player. João Palhinha is the number 6 that we've been crying out for in the last couple of years. These are 2 exceptional signings, in my opinion. But I just feel that we need more, Becky. But is the emphasis on him getting the best out of players rather than bringing in more players than what we expected?
I think, unfortunately, yes, because I heard when Frank was interviewed, wasn't he? He was saying something along the lines of, we have to get the right player. This was before he said he had to have a player that wants to come to us. But before that, he said it had to be the right player. We can't just get players for players' sake. And he said something along the lines of, I've got lots of players and I've got to keep them all happy. For me, that made it sound like he was going to work with who we had, with a few alterations. And obviously the Maddison injury in early August, changed that slightly. And I think that's where it's disappointing, is that you think about Kulusevski and Maddison arguably playing similar jobs, they're both missing. And that seems where this kind of dereliction of duty in that particular position has come from. But going back to the squad in a broader sense, I think we all can agree the squad is better than the 17th that happened last season. I think that was due to formation, that was due to lots and lots of things, intensity, the way they played, etc. And I think the fact that they got Frank in so early, rightly or wrongly making that decision with Ange, is that it was about getting him in and changing his sort of for way that they will play to suit the players that we've got. And I think we've already seen that is coming to fruition, and the players are able to do that. And they seem really happy about it as well, because of the doom, was saying, weren't they, they're not going to play for him, and that's not happened. They seem really happy. So I think it is that he is used to playing with players that are lesser kind of, household names, and kind of working with them. And I think that's what the board felt would happen. And, it looks like that is going to be the case. But then when you have injuries to key players, particularly lengthy ones, it just feels like that's where, And then I think when Romero signs as well, it was in the week where the Eze thing was really kind of gaining momentum. And I think a lot of people thinking, the board have gone to Romero and said, we have got this ambition. We are going to do these things that we've going to, and then all of a sudden that fell through. So you'd like to hope that he has signed, because he is on board with, the things that they are doing behind the scenes. Unfortunately, like you said, we used the word gazumped earlier in the show. And I think that is a word of this summer. We have been gazumped. Wages is not going to change. The way the board operates is not going to change. The rumours about a takeover and naming the stadium and all this sort of thing, whether it was put out there as a PR exercise, but the kind of philosophy of the board is not going to change. We've seen that with the managers that they've had, and it's a little bit like the Poch era. They are hoping that they are going, because Alderweireld, Vertonghen, they weren't household names, and Dele Alli, players that they really brought on, I think they are hoping is going to happen. But from a fan's point of view, we've seen it before where it's all fine in sort of September, October. Ange won 3 Manager of the Months. It's January, February, March, where that kind of strength and depth, or lack of, really kind of hits home against the so-called bigger clubs, that push on and get to finals and go further. And that's what's frustrating. It's fine. Now I always say this, I hate January and February as a Spurs fan. It just feels like normally we're not really involved in anything. Maybe Ange last season did make the decision that we were going to focus on Europa League, because normally we are focusing on the league at that point and everything else is gone. So I do think, in answer to your question, they are hoping that that's what will happen. Maybe for the first season, but second season, he was backed at Brentford. He was backed in a different way. The signings that they make and the players that they kind of go and the recruitment they get. And I think, like Gary just said then about Vinay, we kind of thought that's what was going to happen with him. There was going to be kind of a different sort of philosophy. At the moment, that doesn't seem to have come to fruition. So in answer to your question, I do think they are hoping that's what Frank will do. But then, like I said, when you've got injuries, long-term injuries, there is a lack of squad depth, and we've seen it before, unfortunately.
Becky, with these players that we've missed out on, do you feel like the club are disappointed with what business they have or haven't done? And also, Thomas Frank, how do you think that he is feeling? Because he said in a press conference, I think he's mentioned it twice now, saying, I'm confident that one more will come in before the end of the window.
Yeah, but again, what the managers say and what they think are not always the same, are they? And you don't know how much pressure they've put on to say what they're going to say. Even remember in terms of injuries and what they say about injuries, I think there is a little bit of a PR exercise there. I think it's his way of trying to put pressure on the board and say that we are going to be, but he's still new. He's not going to upset the apple cart that early on. You tend to see that from managers, kind of 6-9 months into a season, don't where they sort of say this is what we needed. So, and it's always January, and whether Paratici is coming back in October, and we look to January, but then they'll say it's hard to buy players in January because there isn't the time to get replacements in, and So yeah, I think it would be frustrating, but I think he's used to working with, smaller squads, but he's not used to working with the amount of competitions that we will have this year. That's the key difference for Thomas Frank. He's not had Champions League or Europa League to deal with. That's the key difference. So I think that will be kind of the real the test for him. But like I said, he's positive. He's a positive guy. I think he's very honest. I like the kind of approach that he has. I hope the players have kind of seen that as well. I just love the fact that you see him doing his tactics and sort of talking to the players inside the pitch and all that sort of thing. That that sounds daft, doesn't it? But that's what you kind of would expect a coach to do. So I think that's really great. And I think as a supporter, that's really positive, and hope that, kind of carries on really with results.
It did make me laugh, actually, a few weeks ago when I posted a number of clips of Thomas Frank running around in the technical area, picking up tactical balls. And I said, look at this. And, a non-Spurs fan replied and went, yeah, he's doing his job. What are you on about? I was like, no, we haven't seen this for a long time. But yeah. Si, let's come to you. What have you made of the season? I know we've spoken about the depth, and we know, I think we're all aligned on this podcast, and lots of the regulars that come on, that, we need a little bit more depth. Thomas Frank needs the help. But, we have got off to a flying start. A 3-0 home win against Burnley. Richarlison with 2 fantastic goals, Johnson with the other. And then that win at Manchester City last weekend. An incredible win. I don't think a lot of people expected that. Polina was outstanding. Of course, he got our second goal. Johnson got the first one. And also, I might add, in match week 1, Richarlison player of the week. Match week 2, João Polina player of the week. I think it says it all, doesn't it? What have you made of these 2 games?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, you can see that there's a team being coached and managed and organised and structured, and they're learning the patterns of play that he wants to do, or specifically the style of game he wanted to play against Manchester City. But we saw that against PSG as well. So the building blocks are there. Look, we still within the team, and particularly with Polina and Kudus coming in, we have intelligent players. Let's apart from all the rubbish spoken on TV, Romero is an intelligent footballer. Van der Ven is an intelligent footballer. Porro's an intelligent footballer. They're all good players. What will make our season is when we don't have the Van der Vens and the Porros and the Romero's in the back line. That will be the making and breaking of what we do. But whilst we do have them playing, and with the if you want to call it our strongest 11 on form at the moment that we can put out, we can give any team in the Premier League a game. Of course we can. We are, European champions. We're not, some pub team that's lucked its way into the Premier League. We've got, highly talented footballers in our team. So what's impressed me is the way that Frank has structured them and organised them to get the best out of the players that he's got available to him at the moment. But like I said, I fully expect us to beat Bournemouth on Saturday. 9 points from 9, everything looks rosy. But when we come back after the international break, and don't forget, some of our players will still be doing long haul travelling as well, we then go into runs of, Saturday midweek. That's the bit that will test the fitness, the strength of the squad and the depth of the squad, because you can't have those players. If you look, how many times have we had Romero come back in the early hours of Thursday morning and he has to play on a Saturday? Well, that's going to be part of the reason that he gets injured, because it's too stressful on the body to be on that regime. So, it's clear for everybody to see the structure that we've got and the organisation that Frank brings. And then, I just think what we've seen already, he will nuance each game for each team that we play. But as with all Spurs managers, you've got to have the tools to be able to not just start a game, but change a game if you want to be successful. So, again, I'm boring on this subject. It all comes back to one thing. We need a Simons. We need a left winger still, in my opinion, even if we get Simons. And we still need a left-sided defender of some description. I still think we're light fullback. But, yeah, and to answer your question, the structure and the organisation and the footballing guile that Frank brings us is as good a signing as we could make to develop the team that we've got.
Before we come on to talk about the Spurs v Bournemouth game that takes place on Saturday, can I just ask you all a very quick question? If the window closed right this minute and we didn't sign any more players, and no more players went out the door, I might add as well, what do you think this squad is good enough for? What can we achieve this season? And also, what would be a good season for you, Gary?
As we are now, 8th and above. I would like to see us do well in a cup, but I would be hesitant long term. I think we're just too short. So for me, 8th would be good, and the latter stages of trophies, which kind of contradicts what I said earlier about winning. But I just think we're very, very light in certain important areas, like Si was just saying.
I know some people take these comments sometimes as negative, but you've got to be realistic as well. When I think, like when Si said about, when we come back from the international break and they're starting Saturday, Wednesday, and then, the games are coming thick and fast. Becky, what about you?
If you'd asked me that, say kind of mid-season, not close to the Europa League, but kind of mid-season, I would have said maybe kind of 12th and up. But I think, 8th and up or 6th and up. I do think we'll get into the kind of the knockout stage of the Champions League, bearing in mind the draw that we've seen today, even if that's via a playoff game first. You want to say go deep in a cup, but we've had this conversation before, and here is the board don't really see them as priority. You get £1 million, I think, for winning the FA Cup. Now, as fantastic that is for Palace, and as we said before about Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup, the board are not going to say prioritise that. So, I think semi-finals would be great for either of those. Obviously, we want to go in to win them, but I just can't see when it kind of comes to it that will be a priority. But like you said before, we haven't conceded yet, and the way we're playing and the way we vary the way we play, I think having City so early in the season was a really good kind of like litmus test, really. And the way we played, and to be so strong in the second half as well, I think for me was just fantastic about that game as well. To see a game out, we've just forgotten what that's like. So, yeah, I think I'm more positive. I think certainly was in the middle of the season when we were hearing that players weren't coming and things. But, like you just said, it's always with an air of caution as players get injured. And like I said, that kind of January, February where it really kind of ramps up.
Yeah. I suppose it's because we have seen how depleted that squad has been in the last 2 years under Ange. And, there's absolutely no doubt he put his job on the line to prioritise winning the Europa League. Si, what about you? What do you think this squad can achieve, and what would need to happen at the end of the season realistically for you to have a big smile on your face?
Well, personally, I still think that with the squad we have today, 6th, 7th for me, I said this in a previous pod, I think we could, dependent on the priorities of the manager, I think we could win, the Carabao Cup. I think FA Cup would go out early, and I think we can get to the knockout stages of the Champions League. For me to have a smile on my face, I'm a man of very, very few needs. I just want to see some good football. I want to see us, trying to win games. A cup or another trophy would be lovely, but I want to see a team that's developing and progressing, and that we can build on again the following summer, perhaps to do a little bit more the season after that, because, the cup win was amazing, but that whole season showed the problems that we have within the squad generally. So, I'm optimistic, and the early signs are good. And I still go back and say, in a one-off game, if we play our, favoured 11 of the time, we can give anybody in our league a game, and we're quite capable of taking on anybody in Europe. So I'm optimistic. Add 3 signings to that, and I'm saying, you really are knocking on the door of 5th and re-qualifying for the Champions League by the league, and maybe we could go a little bit further in the Champions League. Perhaps last 16, last 8. That is the difference that it would make by bringing starters or players capable of being starters into our squad. What about you, Chris? What about you? What would be a good season for you?
I'd love to see us win another trophy. I tell you what, that parade, every single time I talk about it, I get goosebumps on my arms, and that was amazing. And whether it was a League Cup, an FA Cup, whatever it is, you want the big prizes in football, the League and the Champions League. I feel like those two, are far away. I feel like Thomas Frank needs a lot more, a lot more quality in. But the League Cup, the FA Cup, I feel like we should just go seriously. But a part of me, well, a lot of me actually agrees with what Becky said about the club's focus on certain competitions. If we go far and we won it, all well and good. But if there was, prioritising, it would always be the Premier League or the Champions League. So let's wait and see. But I'd take any trophy actually. Like I say, that trophy parade was incredible, and I want to feel like that all the time.
Your league position for us, if the squad was as it is today, what do you reckon?
Thomas Frank gets the best out of players, but I can't see it lasting if we have some injuries. That is my biggest problem and my biggest doubt, and this is why I keep going on about quality coming in this transfer window. So it depends if he can keep players fit, but you can't. It's not sustainable to keep playing the same players week in, week out, game in, game out, especially when it's Wednesday, Saturday. So I'd hope, Si, that we finish in a European spot, because I feel like as a Tottenham fan and as a football club, that should be our absolute minimum, to be finishing in the European spot every single year. Yeah. So let's stay with you, because we're going to talk about the Spurs v Bournemouth game. Now, previous meetings in all competitions, Spurs have won 11, Bournemouth have only won 3, and 3 games have finished as a draw. As I mentioned, Spurs have played 2 in the Premier League, beating Burnley 3-0 at home and beating City 2-0 away. Bournemouth so far, on the opening day of the season, on the Friday night, they went to Liverpool and lost 4-2, and most recently beat Wolves 1-0 at home. Si, can I ask you, what have you made of the job that Andoni Iraola has done at Bournemouth, and what have you made of them so far this season?
Overall, he's done a brilliant job. You only got to look at where their players are heading off to, in terms of how he's coached them and improved them, and developed the skills that they've had. He's got players going off to Liverpool, PSG, etc. So, he's done an amazing job with the budget that they've got there, and that comes down to the scouting and everything as well. I think they're going to be a dangerous team. We've seen it so far this season. They gave Liverpool a game at Anfield, and they obviously won last weekend. So we tend to have good games against them. Exciting games, open games. But I think we've got enough about us to beat them on Saturday. But I think they are going through change, and I think the way that we approach the game will dictate how difficult or how hard it is for us. I know that sounds bloody obvious, but what I'm saying is if we put them under pressure and start with a high intensity and keep that up, then they've got an inexperienced backline insofar as they won't have played that many games together because Kirkez, Barnier and Huijsen were there last season. So I think opportunity knocks for us, to be honest. And if you look at it the other way, their front line, they've built there's Rutaro in. No, he went to Brentford, didn't he? So they've got Semenyo. They've still got Cliver, who was brilliant against us last year, Evan Nilsson and Tavernier. And they did a job on us last year. So it won't be easy, but I think we can do the job. Bournemouth overall, I think they'll have a decent season. I don't see them being in, relegation fodder or in relegation trouble because I think they've got a good manager. They've got, very good forward players. And as we know in this league, scoring goals is really important. And I think they've got it in their locker to do that.
Gary, let's come to you. Si mentioned Semenyo there. This is another player that Spurs were heavily interested in during the transfer window. Didn't get this one done either. What do you make of Semenyo? Would you like to see him in a Spurs shirt? Because as Si mentioned there, away at Anfield, he was the one that scored both their goals.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. It reminds me a bit, Kudus on the opposite side, but bit more physicality about him. Big unit, isn't he? He's a real big guy and pacey. And the way that Thomas Frank certainly had Bournemouth set up last year on the counter when we're sort of handling some pressure, I've kind of seen a little bit of that now from Kudus and Richarlison. But I think that someone like Semenyo out there would be very good at it as well. The price, I think, again, is just what's being reported is probably. It might be his ceiling, but I just don't envision Tottenham going out and spending the type of money that it would to bring him in. That Bournemouth don't want to lose multiple of their best players in one summer. It might be one that we revisit in January or we revisit next summer. I think he's a very, very good player, and I think he showed that against Liverpool. And I think in the Liverpool game he had an exceptional game. Definitely dealing with the circumstances that happened during the game as well, that he remains sort of professional and still put in a great performance. And I'm a big fan of them. I do like Bournemouth. We've got a little bit of a not a soft spot, but I like watching the way that they play and the way they develop players. I think that they do very well. They do good business, and they seem like a good football club. And I just hope they're not a great football club at the weekend, and that we do beat them.
Becky, let me ask you about Andoni Iraola and the job that he's done at Bournemouth, because of course he was on the shortlist to become the new Spurs boss before Thomas Frank. They play some entertaining stuff, don't they?
They do, and I think, like you said, I watched the Liverpool game on holiday, and they kind of, it's this sort of the intensity that they play. It'd be quite interesting to see how it kind of matches against Spurs. Really, because obviously in the City game there was a lot of possession given up to City, and then Spurs almost played kind of a counter attack. I think another thing that's nice this year is the kind of the set pieces and corners and that sort of thing that we seem to have some sort of structure for. But yeah, in terms of Bournemouth, I think you're right. They're not going to give away players unless they have time to get a replacement in. So again, it goes back to the idea of if we were going from, why didn't we do that earlier in the season? I think just reading about some of the comments as well is that some of our youth players, like if Mikey Moore comes back next year, is he someone that's going to be playing left wing? And we just don't know. Will Lancashire and Jamie Donnelly, I think they are two fantastic players that have gone out on loan again, and they've gone up a league. So I think kind of thinking beyond that. But yeah, going back to Bournemouth, I think they're a side that they know how to kind of get round teams and kind of play to their strengths. But I just think we have got enough. When you showed the two teams up there on the screen, I think even without any extras, because you'd argue that if anyone came in now, they wouldn't make the game on Saturday anyway. Is that we have enough to beat them, and certainly at home, I think. I know I've said this before, and we didn't have it last year, but we always feel that we are stronger at home, which is why it's disappointing that our home form was so poor last year. I just think that we have enough to get past Bournemouth. But it will be interesting to see. It's almost like we've played 3 different teams so far, and again, sort of how Frank sort of sets up against them is great. I'm reading people in the comments saying, when we play like a low block team, how are we going to get on? And I think people thought that's what Burnley would do, and I think there's a patience there. I think, like I said, the midfield for me is key. I thought the midfield in both games was phenomenal, and it was different personnel. So I think that's really positive. I think the more the midfield is strong, the less pressure obviously is put on the back 4, and the fact that Spence and Porro are playing in a slightly different way this year as well. It all just feels quite positive. But come back to me in 2 months, that might change. But at the moment, it's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the game. I think it'll be quite high scoring. I do think we'll win.
That's exactly where I was going to go next, Becky. Predicted lineups from the 3 of you, and then we'll finish with some stats. Now, this is how we set up in our last game against Manchester City. Vicario in goal, and then Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Spence, Sarr, Polinia, Bentancur, Kudus, Richarlison, and Brennan Johnson. Si, do you want to kick us off with this? Do you think that this is going to be the same team? Do you think that Thomas Frank will make changes? Because I've said in previous podcasts, and a lot of people give predicted lineups before matches, I think Thomas Frank is going to be very, very difficult to read before games.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think he will only play, and this is again pure guesswork, I think he will only play one of Paulinho and Bentancur. And I think that Berival might get another run out in a home game. Don't ask me why I think that. I just think he will. And I think other than that, I can't see there being any other changes because he's going to want to keep it going. The Bournemouth line out, I can see them only playing a 4-2-3-1. So I can see them trying to want to make it a little bit stronger for them in the middle of the park. But yeah, Spurs for me, it would be Berival and only one of Paulinho or Bentancur playing. Because I still think Frank will take calculated risks to see, what works. And I think he will be a little bit more aggressive and on the front foot in home games. And I think if you've got Berival and Sarr, harrying the life out of the Bournemouth players, then I could see him doing that. But yeah, pure speculation on my behalf. But I do think Bournemouth will go with a 4-2-3-1.
So I also just want to mention Richarlison because he's been named in the Brazil squad. He would be absolutely delighted with that, of course, with the World Cup coming up as well. But the fitness is going to be a key issue. Thomas Frank has spoken about this a couple of times already in a couple of press conferences about, really looking after Richarlison. But he seems to be a very different player, doesn't he? He seems to be like a new signing.
Yes, it's confidence. And, if we were talking about it, he went through pre-season. He was held back where previously he might not have been held back. If you actually look at the guy's shape, he has changed physical shape. They're, working on his diet. They're working on all kinds of stuff to make him, as resilient as they can do. And all of it, it's the sum of the parts that make the whole. But, the start he's made to the season has been brilliant. And, we had the spell with him, not last season, the season before, where he went on a scoring run and he was, scoring every game, every other game. So he's got it in him to be a good player. The only thing that's blighted his Spurs career is when he's had injuries. And, if we are managing that the way that we're doing at the moment, then you will get the player that we've seen in the early games of the season. And if he plays like that, he's worthy of being Brazil's number 9 for the World Cup. And, you know, for a lot of players, this season is a big audition to get in their their country's World Cup squads. So I think you know, we will keep him fit. I'm quite confident. Again, just going to what Frank does with the individual conditioning staff and the way we're looking at players now anyway. And if he does that, he will score goals for us. And if he scores goals for us, he'll be playing for Brazil. So well deserved. And, you know, my only hope when they all go off to international games is they all come back unscathed.
Absolutely. Yes, huge game coming up after the international break. West Ham away, Mohamed Kudus. I tell you, I can't wait for that one. Gary, this lineup that we played against City, what changes, if any, do you think that Frank will make against Bournemouth?
I think there's going to be a couple. I'm very much with Si. I think it'll be Polinia or Bentancur. I think probably more likely to be Polinia. I think just for more minutes in his legs and the familiarity with the side. I think that probably brings in maybe Gray or Bergevall. And I think Johnson potentially might be a change there. I think for the same reasons, getting some minutes into maybe a Tell or Odeberg. The great thing is that the unpredictability of it, I think if we as fans that obviously live and breathe Tottenham through and through, and this is what we talk about every day and whatnot, and we're struggling to pick a team, that's great. But I absolutely love more than anything that we have a manager that's adaptable and that is willing to be adaptable and that is already in 3 games showed adaptability not only prior to the game, during games. That is a huge plus for me. So I think there will be a couple of changes. I'll probably get the entire team wrong if I predicted it. I would like to see. I'd like to see Tell or Odeberg get some minutes and maybe Bergevall as well. That would be the changes for me. I think the back 5 has to stay the same. We have to keep that as the same. They need more, as many minutes together as possible. And then our sort of the remaining 6, I think there might be some changes in there.
Can I just pick out a couple of these players, Gary, to get your opinions on them? Because I mentioned this on the podcast the other day that Jed Spence, you know, no one ever seems to say he's playing out of position. You know, he makes it look so easy on the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side, wherever he plays. And Brennan Johnson, of course, has got off to a flying start in the Premier League this season, scoring in both of our games, although he's had a lot of criticism from a lot of Spurs fans.
Yeah, and I think he's always going to get that. He's not an impact player like a Kudus, where he's going to be on the ball, taking, control of a game. He's not that type of player. He is not necessarily playing on the side that he particularly wants to. But the one thing that's the most important is he puts the ball in the net.
Yeah.
And that wins football games. And that's it. You could, I've been watching the Premier League years or the Premiership years the last couple of days that obviously Sky used to do. I found it online. And the difference in just the strikers alone, they're not dropping deep to pick up the balls all the time. They're literally in and around the box, and that is it. They want to score goals. And if he continuously scores goals for us, I don't particularly mind that he goes missing for 10, 15 minutes of games. He will work back. He'll track in. He's not lazy. He'll work together with his teammates. So I get some of the frustration because I'm doing it during the game myself. I'm like, come on. And then he'll go and score and then I'll forgive him or I'll set one up. So I get that. In terms of Spence, I think he's a tremendous footballer. I've never seen anyone that's had a complete 180 in terms of being at a football club like what he's been able to. And that's testament to him, his family, his upbringing, everything about him that all credit to him. To play again, he's clearly right-footed to play at left back. And I think I said this to you previously that most of the wingers he's coming up against are not right foot, they're left footed. So they're going to be cutting inside, and they're cutting inside onto his strongest foot. And that makes a big difference when you're defending. When you're defending on your strongest bit, that makes a huge difference. And he's confident. He's a very, very confident guy. And more power to him. Really, really pleased. I think that's the type of attitude, mentality, individuals that I certainly want to see at this football club. And long may it continue.
Becky, what changes do you think Thomas Frank will make on Saturday against Bournemouth? And also, I'm showing the images here from the end of the game against Manchester City when we won 2-0 at the Etihad at the weekend. And what I wanted to ask you as well, defensively, we haven't conceded a goal yet in Premier League competition in the 2 games. Christian Romero, I just found it such a funny moment. There was Richarlison just about to have a ruck with someone. There was a couple of other players involved, and then Christian Romero was the peacemaker. We've never really seen this before, but him now having that captain's armband, I feel like we're seeing a different player and a different captain.
Yeah, and I think when we watched the PSG game, I think you could see there was already a difference in the kind of the way the team are. We've always been a team that's got on well. They seem to have a really good kind of connection. And Frank said that in his interview. Thomas Frank didn't he came in and said that they've got a really good connection, and I'm just kind of building on that. But you could see that kind of, the way that Johnson is, Richarlison is, Maddison to some extent when he plays, that sort of, we're not going to be pushovers. And I thought the PSG game, that was a key difference than towards the end of last season, is that, they're not going to be pushovers. And that's obviously come from Romero, I think, the kind of the South American kind of element. But yeah, we said it in Europa League when he brought them over the huddle right in front of the Spurs fans, and the little things that he does. For me, the interview that he did in English was just blew me away, because I have to admit I didn't think he had English, and to see that was brilliant. So I think he's not one to shout it from the rooftops. He said himself, didn't he? He said he doesn't like being on the telly camera, which made me chuckle. So he's still not doing the interviews after the game, but I think you can see the presence that he's had. Kev Danso has praised him in the weeks, hasn't he, to say that he's learning Spanish, and he wants to he's just learning from him, and he's intimated that he's actually a bit of a pussycat off the pitch, and it's only when he's on the pitch that he goes to this alleged kind of fiery player. So that's really nice to kind of hear those sort of insights, because you don't hear those from Romero himself. And Vicario's got his critics, but I think he's a strong presence at the back, and I do think having the set piece coach this year will help him as well. I'm still watching it now. It's fantastic. The unity, I think there's a lot of credit for Anne for that. I think they did have that, and Son as well, I think, brought that to them. It's just lovely to see a kind of such a change in sort of the intensity and the way we play in such a short time, which I think is really promising.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back in terms of the formation and the team for Saturday, I think, possibly Burwell. Archie Gray, we haven't mentioned, he may get some minutes. There may be some sort of changes there. And Udogie, maybe even Danso. We just don't know. And like as Gary said, I think it's quite fun that we don't know that. He may even, rest for Richarlison, and Sankey may start. So, I think he says, he's going to manage players and manage minutes. But I do, like I said, I think there's a lot of good things that Ange started that Thomas Frank is kind of building on, but certainly we need to be a team that becomes more difficult to beat, and I think we are seeing that already this year. Hopefully we aren't going to be conceding the goals that we did last year, but like I said, that's why the City second half for me was really, really positive, because we had such control over it, and we had control in the second half against PSG until we made the subs and they got very tired and the intensity dropped, and I think you can see that already, that the way the team is playing is so positive. Yeah.
Chris, can I just highlight Kevin Danso as well? He's been a fantastic player since he joined in January, and then permanently. I think he's a very, very good player, but the type of person that he is, and that we've seen with social media, last couple of days, but also that he's going out his way to learn Spanish so he can communicate better with Romero. That incredible. Just, to me, that's the type of people that we want at our football club. Ben Davis gets a lot of hate from certain sections as well. We're one of the most professional people you can see, and they're the type of people we need behind such young squad that we have. And I think Kevin Danzo definitely needs a big shout out for just his overall attitude. But every time he's put a Spurs shirt on, I think there was one game, maybe about 10, 15 minutes, where I went, oh, he's not doing very well here. And that's like 15 minutes in all the time he's played. And I'm a big sort of supporter of his, and I hope that he continues to do this, sets good examples, but ultimately gets minutes on the pitch, because when he's playing, he's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thanks, Gary. Right, just going to finish with some stats now, get your score predictions. Bournemouth earned more points in their 6 games against Spurs since returning to the Premier League in 2022, winning 2, drawing 1 and losing 3 than they did in 10 games in their first stint between 2015 and 2020, winning 1, drawing 2 and losing 7. Having won their first 5 Premier League home games against Bournemouth, keeping a clean sheet in each of the first 4, Tottenham have won just 1 of their last 3 against the Cherries, drawing 1 and losing 1, shipping 6 goals in the process. And Tottenham Hotspur have won their opening 2 Premier League matches this season. Spurs are looking to win the opening 3 games for the 4th time in the competition in 2009, 2018 and 2021. With the latter of those, the only time we've won the first 3 league games in a season, and also kept a clean sheet each time. That was, of course, under Nuno Espirito Santo. Si, what's your score prediction for this one?
I'm going for a 3-1, only because I just can't say that Spurs will get 3 clean sheets in a row again. I'll be there on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to it. But I think 3-1 for me. And I think it'll be a good performance from us. All the signs are good, and all I'm hoping is that, regardless of what's going on outside of the matches, that the fans get behind the players. It's not their fault what is or isn't happening in the transfer window and the like. So in the stadium, I think we should be supporting the team and focusing on that above anything else. But yeah, 3-1 for me. I think we'll be 2-0 up at half time, and then we'll draw the second half 1-1.
It'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Going into the international break, 3 out of 3. Gary, what's your score prediction?
Heart says 2-0, head says 2-1. Very similar to Si. I'm not sure we'll keep a third clean sheet. I think if we do keep a third clean sheet, that'll equal the amount that we had last season, which is interesting. I love a 2-0 win, a comfortable one. But I think, depending on how Bournemouth play, the counter attack with Semenyo, etc., worries me slightly. But yeah, heart says 2-0, head says 2-1. So let's hope the heart wins.
I'm going to go 2-1 as well, Gary. I think that Semenyo is going to cause us quite a few problems, but as long as we score more than them and get the 3 points, then we'll be happy. Becky, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to say 2-1 as well. Same reasons, really. I think it's great to have clean sheets, but it's not the be-all and end-all. I think the win is the most important thing. I think from the players' point of view, them going into the international break, I think, like you said, we've got West Ham on the other side and Wolves. If we don't beat Wolves this season, there's just something wrong, because Wolves are our baby team, and I hate playing Wolves. Home and away, and then we've got Wolves after the international break, the start that they've had. But yeah, so I think it's how the Champions League starts, then, doesn't it? And those kind of fixtures kind of ramp up. So yeah, I think just get a win, get off, have a bit of a break, and then come back.
Becky, it's been great having you back with us. Hopefully, you can come back on again very soon. Thank you so much. And where can people find you on social media?
On X, Becky D Becky. I'm back at Spurs on Saturday. I was on holiday for the first 2 games, so that's quite good. Thanks for having me on. It's been great to chat. See you soon. Becky,
thank you so much. And Si, thank you so much for your time this week. 3 hours the other night, an hour and a half tonight. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
It was a pleasure. Well, you can find me at Si the Fox on Twitter, and you can find me hassling Chris at the ground on Saturday probably, and yelling me heart off in the South Stand. So yeah, be spouting off as usual about anything Tottenham and anything political. So yeah, come and have a look. Come and say hello to me, and I'll fire you back, and we can have a chat.
So I thank you so much for your time. And Gary, thank you. And what are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you?
Mainly on Twitter. More Tottenham posts, Italian football, some other bits and bobs here and there. But yeah, mostly Tottenham, and then hopefully some videos and stuff coming next week with sort of opinions and more podcasts and yeah, all the great things about talking about Tottenham.
Well, thank you so much. Si, Gary, Becky, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for listening. And we will be back with another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast after the game on Saturday, when hopefully Spurs have picked up another 3 points. Stay safe and well. Enjoy the weekend. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.